Welcome to Lucidity Insights podcast, where we talk about the ins and outs of the emerging market tech ecosystems here in the Middle East and Africa. And I'm your host, Erica Welch. I also happen to be the Chief Content Officer at Lucidity Insights. You may be asking yourself, what is Lucidity Insights? Well, we're a data and insight streaming platform specialized in investigative deep dive reports on the Middle East and Africa's startup ecosystems. We tell data-driven stories in the format you want, whether it's reports and articles, infographics, videos, or podcasts like this one. Check out more at lucidityinsights.com. Welcome to our second episode in this engaging three-part series, where we delve deep into the heart of African startup innovation and explore the unicorns of Africa's startup ecosystem. These are remarkable startups, a majority of which hail from the Fintech space. Many have not only disrupted industries, deployed innovative business models, but also taken various go-to-market strategies to achieve unicorn status. Each soared to the $1 billion valuation in their own unique way. Get ready to be inspired as we celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit that's driving innovation across the African continent. And perhaps that's why fintechs are spearheading the startup scene in Africa. The majority of unicorns birthed from Africa are all fintechs. But before I go down the list of unicorns in Africa, let's start by talking about who isn't on the list, because I know if I release this without talking about these players, I might get some feedback. So first, let's start with Jumia. Jumia was Africa's first unicorn, and it's not a fintech. It's actually often described as the Amazon of Africa. It's an e-commerce marketplace. Jumia's growth was steep. Between 2013 and 2017, it went on to launch a number of platforms, including Jumia Travel, a travel booking platform, Jumia Food, a food delivery platform, Jumia Deals, and finally Jumia Pay, which was its own payment system. It expanded from Nigeria to 14 African markets by the end of 2018. It's interesting to note here, though, that though Jumia is an African startup focused on the African continent, it was actually legally incorporated in Germany. This is likely because it wanted to be close to one of its largest and first investors, Rocket Internet. Its global administrative headquarters are actually here in Dubai. And according to their IPO filings in 2018, much of their technical development teams sit in Portugal. And as I just alluded, it successfully IPO'd on the New York Stock Exchange in April 2019, taking it off the unicorn list. As we all know, a unicorn is defined as a privately held startup with a valuation above $1 billion. And so whenever startups IPO, they fall off unicorn lists. Next is another IPO success story out of Egypt, Fowry, Egypt's first unicorn. Fowry is an e-payment platform that is often described as one of the most useful companies in Egypt. Perhaps that's because its Egyptian founder started his career as an IBM systems engineer and then went into investment banking. His initial thesis for Fowry was quite simple. The way Egyptians paid utility bills was a nightmare. Whether it was electricity, water, or telecom bills, the process was antiquated. I remember speaking to the founder a few years ago. Most Egyptians, he told me, would spend 2 to 3 days trying to pay their bills at the end of every single month, and it was just untenable. Fowry went on to IPO in 2019 prior to officially becoming a unicorn. But 1 year after it listed on the Egyptian Stock Exchange, it officially reached a market cap of $1 billion. It's a remarkable success story. And if you want to read more about it, you can check out their case study in the spotlights at lucidityinsights.com. Lastly, before we go to the official unicorn list, I want to just mention Paystack. It's more of an honorable mention because they've never been defined as a unicorn, and I think even if we were to look at their filings and their financials, they're probably still a soonicorn. So Paystack has been referred to for a long time as the African Stripe, which is super interesting because in 2020, Stripe went ahead and acquired them for $200 million. To date, this has been Stripe's largest acquisition made public. So why am I mentioning Paystack? It's not a unicorn, likely a soonicorn. The reason is because the more investors in Africa I've spoken to and the more startup founders I've spoken to, especially in the fintech space, they credit Stripe's acquisition of Paystack to the influx of capital that came in 2021 and 2022. So honorable mentions to Paystack. Okay, now let's take a look at Africa's current list of unicorns. You can take a look here. Africa has minted 7 unicorns so far. And if you include Jumia and Fowry, which I've already discussed, it would be 9. 6 out of 7 of Africa's current unicorns are fintechs. Include Jumia and Fowry, and it's 7 out of 9. And looking across this list, of course, the standout is Nigeria, where more than half of all African unicorns are minted. So who are these? I'm going to introduce you really quickly to the 7 unicorns in Africa today. Interswitch is a Nigerian integrated payments company headquartered in Nigeria. It was founded in 2002 with the help of Accenture, making it one of the first tech startups on the continent. Interswitch was created as a transaction switching and processing company, and they became a unicorn in 2019. Flutterwave is a Nigerian fintech company founded in 2016 that provides software development kits or plugins for global merchants and payment service providers across the continent to build payment applications. OPay is a one-stop mobile-based platform for payments, transfers, loans, savings, and other essential services for individual customers. Interestingly, OPay was founded by consumer internet company Opera. Opera is a Norway-based, majority Chinese-owned company. OPay became a unicorn in 2021 with a $2 billion valuation. Let's go to Wave. Wave is a Senegalese fintech that allows for cash deposit, withdrawal, and peer-to-peer business payments via mobile. Established in 2017, their premise was simple. They told us nearly 60% of adults in sub-Saharan Africa had no bank account, and for good reason. The fees were too high, the closest branch could be miles away, and nobody took cards. Wave is solving for this by building instantly available financial services with no account fees accepted everywhere. Next up is Andela. And I like Andela because Andela is the only African unicorn that isn't a fintech. It's a Nigerian talent marketplace that specializes in helping highly skilled African tech talent connect with hundreds of leading companies in the West who leverage Andela to scale their tech teams quickly and cost-effectively. Interestingly, although Andela was founded in 2014 in Lagos, Nigeria, it is now headquartered in New York. Next, we have Chipper Cash, which established itself in 2018 by introducing fee-free transfers for cross-border personal payments, providing a frictionless way to send and receive money around the world. Chipper Cash incorporated itself and launched itself from the US and is headquartered in San Francisco. When I spoke to the founders, they were very clear that this was in order for them to be close to capital. Last but not least is M&T Halan from Egypt. It's the latest unicorn from the continent. It's also the country's largest lender to the unbanked, and it is a digital bank that has obtained micro, consumer, and nano financing licenses to provide fintech solutions for both businesses and consumers across Egypt. Before we move on from this unicorn list, I just wanted to point out 2 things. First, Nigeria and Egypt seem to be the only markets that currently have been able to provide a market where unicorns can be birthed based on a national consumer group. And it's no surprise that these are 2 out of 3 of the most populous countries in Africa. Secondly, many of these unicorns, these African unicorns, have actually set up headquarters outside of Africa. And many of the founders we spoke to said it was imperative in order to help them attract financing. It just goes to show how challenging it is for startups to access capital in Africa, still today. Okay, so that's it for episode 2. Stay tuned for episode 3, where we cover the barriers and challenges to startup ecosystem growth in Africa. If you're already inspired to download and check out the full report, you can check it out at www.lucidityinsights.com.